Alright YouTube, so we are back to talk about some Final Fantasy, and we are finally doing a Stranger of Paradise, a Final Fantasy Origin dedicated video. We've definitely talked about this game before in other videos, but it's been like kind of a news roundup sort of video where we talk about one of like Square Enix's like showcases at one of the gaming events. We kind of in passing talk about this game. I'll be completely honest with you guys right out the gate. I am looking forward to this game in some ways. I do plan on getting this game. It might not be a day one purchase. I might not get it on launch day. But I do plan on getting this game sometime within the next month or so whenever it releases. But at the same time, this game is barely even on my radar. Like, I couldn't tell you barely anything about it. I know the main character's name is Jack. I know he's supposed to be Garland or something. It's a retelling of like the Final Fantasy 1 story or something like that. The gameplay is like an action RPG. It's kind of hack and slash. It's made by Team Ninja. It's something like a Devil May Cry. It may not be the best comparison, but that's kind of what I know about this game. Because again, I didn't even know the rating of this game until here recently, which is kind of the focus of this video. So the other day I was just scrolling Facebook and a Final Fantasy ad popped up and it's for this game, and before I could even scroll past it, I happened to see the ESRB rating for this game, and it's M rated, which surprised me because there's very few of those at all within the Final Fantasy series, and in fact, as of right now, there's only 2. Because there's this game, and then you of course have Type 0/Type 0 HD, which is the original first like Final Fantasy mature rated game. And then we have 16. 16, obviously we don't have an official ESRB rating for that game yet, and we have nothing on that game, really. We don't know anything. When's that game coming out? Does it even exist? Is it a real game? But with one part of that Awakening trailer we got back in 2020, we see a character get their head cut off screen, and the character of Joshua is just completely covered with blood. So it does appear like it might be an M-rated game. Of course, that's just speculation right now when it comes to 16, but as it stands currently, there are only 2 games in the entire 35-year franchise for Final Fantasy that have been rated M. And that's what has me most excited about Stranger of Paradise, at least as of right now. Put aside the story, put aside the gameplay, because I don't really have any personal attachment to the first Final Fantasy game. If you're a big fan of that game, you're probably really looking forward to this. I definitely played the original Final Fantasy. Some years ago, I had a jailbroken like iPhone 3, and I downloaded Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3. I've played them. I couldn't tell you how far I got into the story. Definitely didn't complete those games. So again, I have no personal attachment to the first Final Fantasy, so I'm not really looking forward to this game in that way. Now, that being said, I'm sure the gameplay is going to be fantastic. From what I've seen from like the trailers and stuff they released and like the actual gameplay footage that's out there, it looks like a pretty fun game. It's Team Ninja. They're mostly known for Dead or Alive and Ninja Gaiden, and more recently Nioh. So we know the gameplay is going to be up there, because Nioh's almost like a Souls game, if I'm not mistaken, right? I've heard people talk about how hard those games are. And also the Ninja Gaiden games are usually considered pretty hard. I don't know exactly how hard they compare to other more modern games. But either way, we know the gameplay is going to be good. But putting that stuff aside, this being an M-rated game sets a precedent going forward for the franchise, and also if 16's M-rated. Like, that means maybe going forward we can get more mature stories with the Final Fantasy franchise. And don't get me wrong, I think every Final Fantasy out there has a good story. Some are great, and obviously depending on whatever your favorite Final Fantasy is out there, some are just beyond great. Some of the best games you ever played, right? I think they've done a fantastic job with the franchise for 35 years now with a T rating. But maybe we can start getting more realistic with our stories. Because one thing that always kind of takes me out of television shows, video games, etc., is people not reacting realistically to situations. If I can use a television show as an example really quick, The Walking Dead, one of my favorite TV series of all time, but it's a television series. It's on cable. They can only say so much. I think in more recent years they can get away with dropping 1 F-bomb per season. But a realistic reaction to me walking out my front door and seeing a walking corpse coming towards me is, what the fuck is that? Or if we want to use the Final Fantasy franchise as an example, when it came to something like Sephiroth slaughtering Nibelheim in Final Fantasy VII, not one time did somebody say, Sephiroth, what the fuck are you doing? Because that's how people would react. If I walk out my door, my town's on fire, I see Sephiroth killing people, and to be fair, I probably wouldn't confront Sephiroth directly, but you get my point. Now, to be fair, the original FF7 did have a lot of cursing in it, but the explicit words were obviously blanked out. And actually, speaking of Final Fantasy VII, I think Remake so far within the franchise has the most realistic dialogue between characters. It probably has, overall, I would say, the most cursing, unless I'm mistaken. But you hear curse words all throughout this thing. They say the word shit a lot in this game, but also you have stuff like Reno jumping out of the helicopter and calling Cloud a bitch.
You. It's something personal, bitch!
You even have something like innocent little Aerith saying the word shit because that's a realistic reaction to a ladder you're climbing falling out from under you.
Shit.
And look, it's not just about cursing in games. That's like my measuring for when a game is good, but I like my characters to talk like actual people talk, right? To react realistically to situations they're experiencing. But even beyond just the language aspect of an M rating for a game, you have, with Stranger of Paradise, it's rated M for blood and gore. Now, is that human gore, or is it just like you can cut off chunks of monsters or limbs of monsters? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe you guys could fill me in on that. But the fact that we have a Final Fantasy game that has a blood and gore rating is exciting to me. What I'm hoping going forward for the franchise with Final Fantasy is that maybe they're setting some sort of a precedent, maybe testing the waters with Stranger of Paradise and possibly 16 as well for an M rating for a game, see how well they do, how well they sell, how well they are perceived, and hopefully this can tie back into FF7, because going forward with Part 2 and beyond for Remake, we get into some pretty heavy shit. There's some bloody, gory type shit, character deaths, etc. You also have somebody like the character of Sid who curses excessively. That's just who he is. That's part of his character. And we've talked about it in the past whether or not we think they're going to be able to depict him accurately within Remake. But if these M-rated Final Fantasy games do well, maybe we'll have the balls to step into that territory. Maybe we get to actually have the actual Sid from Final Fantasy VII. Look, I don't think that they need an M rating to tell a good story, right? They've done a fantastic job for 35 years now. We already discussed that within this video. But I've been playing this franchise for most of my life at this point. Now I'm a grown-ass man, and as a fan of this series, I'm very much looking forward to mature story, whether that's just graphic content in terms of blood and gore, language, or combination of both of those. Look, I know this video wasn't strictly about Stranger of Paradise, but the fact that this game exists at all has me excited for it, 16, hopefully Remake, and just the franchise as a whole going forward, because if you're a fan of Final Fantasy, I don't know why you wouldn't want more mature content in your games, even if that is just a little bit of extra cursing and maybe a little bit more blood. My dudes, that is going to be the video, so of course I'm going to pass it off to you guys. What are your thoughts on Stranger of Paradise? Do you plan on getting it? Are you really looking forward to it? Do you think 16 is going to be an M-rated game? Do you think it's even remotely possible that at least one of the games within the Remake project is going to potentially get an M rating? That's going to be the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys aren't wants to do more Final Fantasy Stranger of Paradise content. I might do like a review or something once I pick up the game and eventually do beat it. Turn on notifications. Follow me on Twitter, _DavidYT. I'm a Discord. Links to social networks are in the description. In the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.